Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. And if you've been following the news lately, you noticed the local boy made good. Specifically, Jerry Parisella has been appointed a circuit judge. So now there's an opening for state rep. And with us this evening is Hanna Bowen, currently our City Councilor At Large, who's thinking of bigger and better things, and you're going to run for become the next city councilor from this area.
Yeah, that state rep seat opening up is new and it's happening fast. And I think to start a new legislative term without a rep in the seat is something that made us all sort of look and say, oh, we need to get someone in there who's ready to go, who can fill some big shoes, who as a freshman legislator can make sure that Beverly and now that sliver of Wenham that is part of the district is at the table. So I've spent the last couple of weeks trying to figure out, is it possible to do that role and do it well right from the start, and landed on yes. So yes. I am running.
So you're running.
Yeah.
So assuming you get the job, so far the papers haven't been issued yet, and the city hasn't scheduled any.
Right. We don't know the exact timeline. It's up to the Speaker of the House to call the special election, and then the city clerk, the town clerk, and the Secretary of State all have to work together and figure out the exact process, the dates for probably a primary and a general election this spring sometime.
The three candidates have made an indication they're going to run for it.
Yep. So, and there may be more by the time nomination papers come out. It's exciting.
So this could be an interesting spring.
Yep.
So let's assume you get the job. And what would your priorities be?
Yeah, well, there's really two sides to the job as I see it, maybe even a third way of thinking about it. So one is the constituent service work. So kind of similar to what a city councilor does when people are having a problem and they're not sure how to navigate it. They call their elected representatives and ask for help. And so that can be anything from figuring out the state bureaucracy, working with the RMV, or working with a state department that sent you a letter, you don't know what to do with it, working with housing placements, things like that, where people call the office or are looking for help. You have to sort of know your way around those agencies, be able to walk people through a process, and be a sympathetic ear when they call, be approachable, that people are going to feel comfortable coming with what can be really deep crises, can be really personal. So being that kind of conduit to accessing services across the state, accessing the supports that people need. So that sort of day-to-day constituent services work. The other part of the job is the policy piece. And in city government, that looks a little bit different, but at the state level, it can be a really slow process. And then sometimes it can be a really fast process, right? So we see 2 years of a term nearly wrap up, and then in the last few days, there's massive amounts of language to read through to figure out, is this package gonna change things for my community? Is it gonna get the state resources to us that we need? Is it going to disrupt what we're trying to do at a city and town level? So being able to process that quickly when needed, when there are proposals out there at the 11th hour, and do the slow and steady work to get those policies moving is a difficult but I think exciting dance, and one that I've navigated in different ways in my past work and even now in the city. So those two big areas are kind of how I see the job. I think there's also a piece around sort of what it means to be a community leader, and particularly in the next few years as we're coming out of a contentious time in Beverly with a teacher strike, a contentious time across the state and country in just our political discourse. I think the role of of local leaders, of state leaders, is also about sort of how you show up, how you bring people together, how you convene conversations. So I see the role as including that as well. And all three of those I think are important. They're areas where it's almost not about the specific issue all the time. It's about how you do the work. And then when it comes to specific issues, I mean, education funding is obviously top of mind for all of us here in Beverly. Yeah. Infrastructure issues, obviously top of mind. When we think about our public transportation, when we think about our roads, sidewalks, and bridges, those are all things where we really need strong representation because there are lots of competing interests across the state, and we need to be there and be showing up.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, Beverly has got some serious issues that are statewide, and it's not something that Beverly can solve all by ourselves.
Right.
Specifically, the two bridges that are out. They've been out for a couple of years
Too
now,
long. Yeah.
and it doesn't look like they're going to get fixed anytime in the near future.
Yeah.
And this again is one of those issues that, how did this happen? And now that it's happened, how do we recover from it?
Right.
And there was an article in the paper this morning about how Biden got the federal government involved to get the bridge in Baltimore fixed, kind of thing. And really, we just can't go to the President of the United States to get the local.
Right.
But at the same time,
but we can expect our state leadership and city leadership. It's on all of us to be persistent in. MassDOT didn't come for their last meeting proposed by the city and worked out in partnership with the city. Got canceled, hasn't been rescheduled yet. Like we do need to be persistent, be working in partnership with those state agencies, and be a little annoying at times to them, and walk that balance, because we have to understand all the competing things they're working on, all the constraints they're under, of course, and need to be pushing at the same time, because among those priorities, it's the highest priority for us. We need to express that and not shy away from that, and not consider that like being overly persistent, but persistent enough. And so I think that's going to be something the next person in this role is going to have to just day in and day out be good friends with the MassDOT folks, and also be expecting them to show up and holding them accountable for progress on the project, and communicating back to the community where those roadblocks are, what the constraints are, where else community action can help, what else we can be doing to mitigate the impacts in the meantime. All those things we have to continue to talk about, because it's not going away, and so we have to constantly be updating folks and be sharing that information out.
well, to the extent that Beverly is a growing city, and there are a lot of issues that interact with the state, and the ones that comes to mind immediately is Folly Hill is starting to talk about a development.
Yeah.
And, well, that's nice. You can get from Folly Hill to 128 relatively easily.
Yeah.
If you want to
least
go to
128
Gloucester.
Yeah.
Now, if you want
Yeah.
to go west on 128, getting out of Folly Hill to there is a challenge.
Yep.
So this is another interaction with the MassDOT as how do we get there from here?
Yep.
And similarly, we've been talking for years about how do we get access to Dunham Road without having to go through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you get into some of these issues of, my simple mind, it's, just extend Dunham Road out to Essex Street and you got an automatic
Okay,
entrance. Well, it's not quite that easy because there's a lot of issues involved. And so there's really a negotiation. So
Yeah.
it has to be undergone with lots of different agencies. We run into this problem with the bridges because the Coast Guard gets involved, and the Corps of Engineers gets involved.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of coordination and a lot of moving pieces where our project is just one of many projects
Yeah.
for some of the other folks involved. And so making sure that we keep at it and we help with that coordination, because not everyone may be talking to each other directly. And so being able to get everybody in the room who needs to be there is a key step.
yeah. And at the other hand, you mentioned working with the constituents on what seems to be a personal problem.
Yeah.
I know I had an interaction with Jerry Parisella in his office over my granddaughter got a funny bill from a medical bill from college up in New Hampshire. And she was on mass aid.
Yep.
And not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And try to find somebody that knows what's going on and how it gets resolved. It was let's say a year-long process.
Yeah,
and,
it can be.
I had dunning notices from collection agencies and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually, through Jerry's office, got to the right guy, and one of his staff actually
Yeah.
found the right people
Yeah.
and made it all go away.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you thought to make that call, because we don't always think of our state rep or our city councilors or other elected officials as being there for that reason, but we are and should be. And so I think that's a great example of, when you're not sure exactly what to do with this thing, it's hard to find someone who'll pick up the phone. It's hard to know what questions to ask. State rep's office should be a place to get those answers, to be there with you as you try and navigate that system. And as you said, the staff are there day in and day out. They know those ins and outs, and that's what they're there for. That's what the office is there for, and how we should use it. So I think letting people know that that's also a key part of the role is hopefully something that a special election draws attention to.
Yeah, because I think that is an important part of it, because the state rep personally, she can't do all things at all times. So to my way of thinking, it's not only getting involved yourself as the state rep, but also having a staff, developing an office that has these capabilities that you can go see somebody and say, hey, we got this problem. What does it take to fix it?
Yeah.
And send some of the staff off to go get smart on who gets involved and what's the drag and who's blocking the process.
Right.
And how do we get around it?
Yeah.
And then call for the state rep to put the muscle to it and say, hey.
As needed.
Yeah, as needed.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I wish you luck on kind of that
Thank
kind
you.
of thing. It's
Yeah.
going to be a bit of a challenge,
Yeah.
which is a lot different than being a city councilor, because city councilor, you're all things to everybody.
True. Yeah. We don't have a staff. It's part-time. The state rep role is full-time. To me, that's exciting. It's obviously not something I had planned on.
Yeah.
There was just an election. I was not running in that one. But it is a really exciting opportunity, I think, and an opportunity for the city. It's, we're losing someone who had some seniority, really powerful committee assignment, like really deeply involved. And so that's going to be a loss. The way the State House works, that matters quite a bit. So somebody coming in fresh will be in a different kind of position, but also gives us that chance to sort of raise awareness about the role, have that like discussion about what we want to see from our rep. That's what elections do. And so even though it's a little bit, the timing will be tight, it will be a lot of kind of letting people know that it's happening, how it's happening. I think it's an exciting chance for us to sort of get the word out about here's all of the things the state rep has been doing and the new state rep will do. So yeah, to me, that's all, I think a really exciting chance for the city and something I'm excited about personally.
Well,
And I think, between my current day job and city council work, I do have that kind of balance between constituent service, like helping people with specific problems, doing that navigation, referring people on to other services, and the policy making side of it. So the chance to combine those and represent Beverly and part of Wenham at the state level on a somewhat wider range of issues, ones I've touched on, but that are not all covered in the city council, is, feels like a really interesting step and an important one, where I think we, again, really need someone who's ready. And though it's been a quick decision-making process, I'm feeling really good about it. And the more I talk to people about what we need and what it would look like, the stronger I feel about that decision.
Well, the other part of the situation, you point out that Jerry's been in the city and he's also been in the state for quite some time.
Yeah.
And he's moved up in the hierarchy of the state.
Yep.
As you say, a very important committee chairmanship.
Yep.
And with that comes the ability to get things done. So that's a challenge to develop that same kind of rapport with the agencies, so that the needs of Beverly, like more money for sidewalks, more money for the schools, more money from the state from lots of different things, like a connection from Brimble Avenue to Dunham Street, and another one from 128 going the other way out of Folly Hill. And you can see these programs coming that, there's a problem. We need more money for it. How do we get that from the state? And that is going to be, I think, one of the challenges for the new rep, is to get into that same groove that Jerry was in.
Yeah, and I think it's a responsibility I take really seriously, and wouldn't put myself forward for the role if I didn't think I could get there quickly. Because I think, I have worked with other state legislators. I have worked with partners across the state in my day job and before. So I feel confident that I can get there. But you're right, it is, for anyone in that role, it's going to be a challenge, because they'll be there, coming in slightly off cycle. Just the last couple of weeks, new legislators who were elected in November to start in January have been getting up to speed. The next Beverly Wenham rep is not going to have that same time to prep. So that's something I have thought a lot about. And I think it's a challenge I'm ready for.
Well, then the other half of the game is, can you get Jerry to do some mentoring? How did you do this?
Right. Yeah. How did this work? Yeah. And it's, I think,
what are the right buttons to push?
Yeah. And we're lucky that there are some really generous legislators around the North Shore who work together well, who have collaborated on regional issues. So, I know Jerry will be busy in his new role as well, and we are lucky to have him joining the court. I do some work with the courts in the mediation world, and just know how important it is to have the right people in those roles. So won't want to overburden him, but also you're right. His wealth of experience in this role, the staff that he has mentored, who know their way around, and the other legislators who have been collaborating with him and are ready to collaborate with who's next in the role, I think are all going to be necessary to help, with that transition.
So it's unlike the city, where we have a strong mayor, and the city council is just the final vote positive to move forward on a process. State rep, I guess, is in a different role, a different kind of environment.
Yeah.
Where It's not just going to the zoning board and saying, hey, would you consider such and such, or going to the engineering office and say, so-and-so's trees need trimming or
Right,
something
that
like
pothole,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's trying to get, essentially get money for the city, and that means somehow or other, somebody else has to maybe give up one of their pet projects. So that's
Yeah,
a different give and take.
Yeah, that's one element of it, and there's definitely a lot of give and take. That's how public decisions get made.
Yeah.
And when I was running for city council, I got the question a lot of times, many times. Don't you know that the city council doesn't have much power in this system? It's just the sort of rubber stamp piece, and I didn't think that was necessarily true. I don't think it has necessarily been true in the past. And so I sort of took that as a bit of a challenge to say, okay, if there is a perception that the city council can't initiate policies or really is just there to respond to things, and I don't see that in our city charter. I don't see that in the way I've observed city councilors to approach the role. How can I help shift that public perception and make good use of this role? And I think over the last few years, we've seen the city council help advance some things like the accessory dwelling unit proposal, some ordinance changes that councilors have put forward, forming new committees, being really proactive in the budget process. So, and even, just in the last few weeks in thinking about what was our role in the school negotiations, where we didn't have a formal role to play, but did have a platform to share what the community was asking about and feeling. So I sort of look at the state rep seat in the same way. If I hear frustration, and I have already heard frustration about the pace at which the state legislature works, or how it feels closed, people are looking for more transparency, all of these things, to me, that's not a deterrent for going into that role. It's something I should think about, okay, how can I, in that role, make sure that things are not moving slower than they need to, that we are increasing transparency where we can and prioritizing that people are hearing what they need to hear back from their rep, and shift both the reality and the perception. So I don't go into this race or hopefully this role with any illusions about the challenges. They are real, and I think those are opportunities as much as they're challenges. So to me, the city council has proven to be a place where councilors can help shape the agenda, can do more than just react, and I see the state rep role in that same way, that just because things have been a certain way or are perceived a certain way, it doesn't mean that's the only way to approach it. And so I'm excited to see how that plays out, but also have a practical view on the real challenges that are there, and see them as reasons to do the job rather than reasons not to.
Well, I think that really comes down to the thing. There is no obvious line of authority from state rep to get anything done, just like there is no obvious line of authority for the city councilor to get anything done. So if you want to get something done, you have to do it a different way. Mm-hmm. And that requires initiative and lots of other things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you have to do it as a team in some way. So, when you are a legislator among others, you have to be able to build coalitions. You have to be able to talk to people who you may disagree with on some things and agree with on others. Yeah. You don't, well, you're not a single decision maker.
Yeah,
so.
You got to find those paths.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've got a few minutes left. Would you like to talk to the audience?
Address the camera? Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most important things to say are a thank you to our outgoing rep, Jerry Parisella, who has served the city well, will continue to serve in the new role that he's taking on early next year. And to let people know that there is an election coming up. We don't know exactly when yet. It has yet to be announced the exact timeline, but it will be a busy spring. And I am ready for the campaigning process. It's fun to be out talking to people, even in the dead of winter, about what you want to see from our state legislature and in how Beverly and Wenham are represented there. So I'm really excited to spend more time on that side of things while still delivering what you expect from me as an at-large city councilor. And I just want to remind people that it's going to be an election year, 2025, for all the city seats as well. There are 2 new school committee seats that will be elected for the first time. We're expanding the size of the school committee. The mayor is up for election for a 4-year term. That seat has also changed a bit from a 2-year term to a 4-year term. And all of the city council seats are up for re-election at the same time. So while this special election is thrown in the mix and will happen earlier, it's going to be a big year for Beverly politics, and just really invite everyone to be as actively involved as you can so that we have that full set of representation and all of our voices heard. That's my pitch.
That's your pitch. And vote for you.
Yes,
And
yeah.
vote. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and wish you the best of luck. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. And if you've got some comments, my email address is at the end of the credits and at the very beginning of the credits. So send me an email and tell me what you think. And if you have a much longer statement you want to make, there's always room for you here at the table. Thanks for joining us this evening, and see you next time.